Let's give a warm peak experience welcome to the fabulous Delinda Crampton.
Well, it is great to be here, and how cool that Brian Buffini let me be his opening act. Huh? Thank you so much for that opportunity. So, unlike Brian Buffini, I do not have a dramatic story. I didn't come to the United States with $92 in my pocket. I didn't have a horrible motorcycle accident that landed me $250,000 in debt. And no, I was not living off of 2 grapefruits. Now, Brian really had some memorable moments there. And when I think about memorable moments and the power of a moment, part of my story takes me back to 4th grade. And back in 4th grade, it was not a happy story, but as so often can happen with the tough times, it did lead to many blessings in life. So back when I was in the 4th grade, like knowing the woman I am today, if you had known me then, you would never have guessed that I was the same girl. I was incredibly unpopular. I was always the shortest in my class. And I just was not athletic, and that was the thing that helped you fit in. And I just desperately wanted to fit in. That's what you want at that age. You want to be like everybody else. So in the 4th grade, I had a crush on this boy named Mike. And excuse the terminology I'm about to use here, but Mike decided one day that Delinda sounded like dildo. And so, yeah. And so he got all the kids calling me that. And things went from bad to worse. I was in a class with only 34 students, and so I got put in this box that I could not break free of. I felt ugly, I felt unloved, I was rejected, and it was just an incredibly painful period in my life for me. And I know that so many of you have been through so much worse, but for me, this is just where I was at. As a result, I became extremely insecure. My saving grace was church, where I had friends, I was loved, and accepted for who I was. And so I endured the hell of middle school and high school, and then I graduated, and I decided when I went to college, I was going to be who I really knew I was inside. I was going to be me. So I was going to be outgoing. Not an introvert. I was going to date. I was going to have actually that first kiss. And boy, I'll tell you, I got it down to business. I had my first kiss orientation week. I wasted no time. No grass growing under this girl's feet. So I joined a sorority and was involved in countless activities. I even, believe it or not, got to compete in the Miss Greek competition and represent my sorority. Who would have known back in 4th grade? I was loving college. But underneath it all, there was still this need to fit in. There was this need, I had to keep working past all these insecurities that I had developed. And I feel like it really drove me. Like if you were to look back at my calendar, you could see I was just this little overachiever. I was just trying to be someone, trying to prove myself. And that really, I see that carried into my career as well, because as a realtor, I was just working so hard. And I think that had it not been for that tough time though, and trying to prove myself, I wouldn't be where I am today. And one of the last Buffini coaches I had actually told me one day, she goes, you are the most driven person I have ever known. So why and how real estate? I remember the day I got into real estate, and maybe some of you can relate. It was kind of inevitable that I ended up in real estate, really, because my dad was a realtor, my sister was a realtor, my brother-in-law owned a mortgage company. I mean, I was surrounded. So after graduating from college, I packed up my Honda and said goodbye to my family and drove off to get a graduate degree at a prestigious school of real estate. No, just kidding. Really, I did go to graduate school, but it was for journalism. And after a 12-year career, both behind and in front of the camera, I decided, like many of you, to do some dabbling in investing in real estate. After a bit, I realized that I had reached my peak in journalism, and to me, more and more real estate seemed like a career that was turning into a calling rather than just a hobby. And so, like many of you who come from another career into real estate, the rest is history. So how did I go from hitting a peak in journalism to climbing the mountaintop in real estate? Let's call it the 3 C's. So often I get asked by people, hey, what's the secret of your success? How did you get to where you are today? And the first word out of my mouth is always consistency. It's doing those little things every day. And when you do those little things consistently, they add up to big things, and you could do the big things consistently. And if you think about a puzzle, puzzles are made up of all little pieces, and when you consistently put together those little pieces, you get to the big picture. Now, what does it mean to be consistent? Well, we all know the Buffini system, right? It's writing those notes, doing those pop-bys, making those calls. And there's a saying you hear about among Buffiniites, which is trust the system, it works. And you know what? It really does, as we've seen. I get told by people all the time, oh my gosh, you are so amazing at marketing. Let me let you in on a little secret. I'm really not at all. It's just that I've done the little things so consistently over time that when people think of buying or selling real estate, they think Delinda Crampton. Another area of consistency is my schedule. When you hear about like some of those well-known famous people out there, so often you hear that they have a routine, they have a schedule, and they get up early. So during the week, I'm either up at 5:15 a.m. or 5:45 a.m. depending on the day. And 3 mornings a week, I run. During that run, I listen to podcasts, especially the Brian Buffini podcast, and that's my me time. That is my personal development time. And then on top of that, I read business development books. So many great suggestions made here today. I journal. I attend trainings, not only Buffini events, but other trainings as well. And I also take care of my body, which is so important. I get an almost weekly massage. And it's only when we care for ourselves that we can be at our best to care for our clients in the best way, right? So, there are many areas where consistency is important. Consistency in how we do our business. Consistency in lead and client follow-up, which I like to joke that if a lead, I follow up for so long that until a lead's really dead. I've converted stuff 5-7 years into following up. I don't quit until I know it's done. So, and then consistency in those words we know so well: contact, care, and community. Or should I say calls, notes, and let me hear ya. Popeyes, woo! All right. So the second thing we need, the second C, is clarity, which would be goal setting and knowing your why. So I have something I do every year. I will write out a new set of affirmations and I post them on my bathroom mirror. Now with James's help, I can chalk them on my bathroom mirror. Thank you. And when you see them every day like that, they get into your subconscious. And it's amazing how many of those goals I have achieved every year. So there's a little idea for you guys. Another thing with goal setting comes hope. It's hope that gave me the perseverance not to quit. And I will never forget, just 6 months into the business, I was working 12 to 14-hour days, and I had only done 2 rentals and made $550. Now, $550, that's not even enough to pay your real estate, dues and whatnot. So I was in the hole in real estate. And I remember one day I was talking to my broker, and I was in tears, telling her how frustrated I was. And I was working these long days, and I was busting my butt, and I was doing everything right, and it just was not happening. And then I was, clients would flake on you and all that good stuff, right? So, but like Andy, I kept on. Real estate, we go in expecting to be an overnight success, right? Wrong. Yeah, that just doesn't happen. But I was out to prove myself, and I wanted to show that I was worth something from, relating back to my younger days, and it seriously fueled me. And so I kept, like Andy in Shawshank Redemption, chipping away and chipping away. And when I was growing up, my parents taught me to believe in myself and that anything I wanted to do, I could do. And so finally, that happy day came when I got my first closing. And then after that, the floodgates opened. All right, I had clarity in my mind as to where I wanted to go in the business. So one of my big, hairy, audacious goals was hitting 10 million in sales. And I felt like when I hit 10 million, man, I was a success. People would finally look up to me, they would respect me, I would have value and worth. I used to think, like, why would anyone want to be my friend? I've got nothing to give. I'm not interesting. That kind of thing. So I was really like, that was my identity, which is not really such a good thing. You don't find your identity in your business. So anyway, my second year in the business, 2005, market was going really well, and I hit $6 million in sales. So after that, some years I hit 6 million, some years I hit 8 million, and then one year I hit 9.9 million, and missed it by that much. Yeah, painful. So anyway, just like Andy, I kept digging that hole, I kept chipping away, I stayed consistent in all that I did. And I made up my mind that someday I was gonna hit what I thought was my San Juan Teneo. So in 2012, at the very, very bottom of the market in Vegas, when homes were worth 30 cents on the dollar from the peak, I did it. I actually hit 10.2 million in sales at the bottom of the market. So, and then the next year, guess what? My volume dropped nearly in half. Ouch. So, but with the help of continued consistency, I eventually hit that tipping point. Some years my business grew 50%, other years it grew close to 100%, and it got to the point where the referrals were just coming in so strong and steady that I didn't have to worry where the next referral was going to come from. So fast forward to last year, and we closed 123 transactions resulting in over 43 million million in sales. Yes, there we go. All right, so that put us in the top 50 in Vegas and the top 100 in Berkshire Hathaway. And to this day, that truly is still sinking in. I am very, very humbled by it because I still look up to so many realtors that are still, way above me. So another part of clarity is knowing your why. So for so long, I was just striving to hit that next level in business. And, and when I got to think about it, I'm like, oh my God, that's so shallow. That is so self-serving. There's got to be more to my why than that. So after some introspection, I realized that my why was my family. My husband was a stay-at-home dad at the time. I've since roped him into the business. So the burden to provide fell on me. And so that's really a huge part of my motivation and what was driving me. Now the third C is confidence or belief in yourself. Like I shared growing up, my parents really taught me to believe in myself. I think that enabled me to take the leap of faith and the risk going from television into real estate. And it also helped me get through all the tough times and challenges, because when you're a realtor, you're guaranteed to have challenges, right? Yeah. Whether it is that client where you just can't wait to get done with the transaction and delete them from your database, or maybe it's the peaks and valleys of the business, or maybe even behind on taxes, right? But none of us would ever be behind on taxes, right? Because we budget, we do a feeding. Yes. So I certainly went through my share of challenges along the way, and one of the biggest ones was when the market tanked. I mean, you all have heard what happened in Vegas. And I sat at countless kitchen tables where people were 1 in 200,000 upside down on their homes. I had clients I had sold homes to at the very peak of the market, only to years later do a short sale, and thankfully they never blamed me for it. I showed homes on streets that were lined with for sale signs of homes that had been foreclosed on. I did more than 100 short sales, and had to do even a few short sales on my own investment homes. I also went through the challenges of growing a team. I had a team member who the others felt like she wasn't pulling her weight, and so they ganged up against her. Then there's also the joys of finding good talent. So I had one assistant while she was babysitting while I was out throwing my husband a surprise 50th birthday party, and while she was there, she decided to steal my jewelry, steal money. And then after I fired her, I found an uncashed commission check in the file and found out she'd been on drugs. Okay, now that makes sense. I had another assistant that turns out was a functioning alcoholic. And so I went through assistant after assistant after assistant, learning lessons along the way. So other challenges, I had 2 babies and had to juggle both work and raising a young family. And when I was working, I felt guilty that I wasn't spending time with them and was missing their growing up. And when I was with them, I felt guilty that I wasn't, working. And I just felt so torn and pulled in 2 directions at once. And, I didn't want to sacrifice my customer service. And so all too often it was my family that paid the price. Who of you can relate to that? It's a tough struggle. There were so many times when my little guy Dylan would be like, "Mommy, come do crafts, come do crafts." And I hadn't finished my work calls for the day. And then by the time I finally got done, it was bedtime. And I had missed those moments. And Dylan was growing up right before my eyes. So, I had felt like by becoming so successful, I had actually created a prison of my own. In spite of all the challenges, like Andy, I never gave up. I stayed resilient, consistent, and committed. So what do I see as the defining moments in my life that got me there? One of the first ones was the belief that my parents instilled in me. The next was being introduced to Brian Buffini and the referral system. I don't know if I hadn't been, I don't know that I would enjoy this business so much and that it would be such a passion for me. The next one was attending my first peak and all the wonderful relationships that resulted from that. And just like Andy and Red in the movie Shawshank Redemption, we are there for each other through our struggles and our challenges. And I'll never forget going to peak after James' home had burned down just 3 weeks later, and we were jumping off boulders into the water to raise money so he could pay his deductible. And then ironically, years later, Russ's home burns down, and countless Buffini people drove hundreds of miles to make sure that his kids could have a Christmas, and to make sure that one of his boys could have the most in-demand toys that year. Most impossible to get toys. We got it. These friendships are such a blessing, and I tell you, the referrals that we get are just the gravy on the top. Another defining moment was figuring out my why. In addition to providing for my family, I also wanted to create a legacy for my boys about what it looks like to be a good business person who does things with integrity and works with ethics. I also wanted to show them that you can set goals and actually reach them. And then another thing is I wanted to create a legacy of a different kind, that of giving back. So I became a Rotarian, and I'm involved in a lot of their projects. I've gone on mission trips overseas. We've hosted exchange students in our home. We've had 4 girls to date. I mentor other realtors, and I serve at my church. I'm now on the board of the Las Vegas Philharmonic, and now I want to do even more by helping my business to aid the homeless youth situation in Las Vegas, which is one of the worst in the country. So with each closing, I want to help feed them, and maybe someday even I can buy an apartment building to get some of those kids off the street. So you'd think closing $43 million in a year that I had reached my say one to nail, but that wasn't the case. My